Yo, this is the Fight Sites MMA podcast. I am Ed Gallo. I'm joined by Sriram Merlal. Yeah, I always nail it. Marley Darren. Sriram Marley Darren. I get it every time. This is the first time that I didn't get it. Sorry. How are you?
It's no big deal. Yeah, I'm good. Fun card last time, and at least one good card to talk about this time. Mm-hmm. So, not much to complain about.
Yeah. We got lots of fights to discuss. Some high-level MMA has occurred, and there's some high-level MMA on the horizon. Not the Strickland Hall card, but actually Bellator has a great event coming up. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's not the typical Bellator Friday, UFC Saturday type of deal. It is what it is. You're going to have to pick one or watch them simultaneously.
They're directly competing.
Yeah. Do whatever you want, honestly. But Bellator is the better card for sure. But before we get into that, we're going to discuss the previous UFC card, Dillashaw versus Sandhagen, which was one, that fight was amazing, and two, that card was amazing. So that's fantastic. But before we do any of that card breakdown stuff, let's talk about some huge news that I'm sure we're both very excited about. Colby Covington's getting a second title shot. The rematch against Kamaru Usman. Obviously, the first fight was extremely close, and he was up 4 rounds, and then it got stopped early. He should have won, obviously. So, good to see him getting some justice. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, who can argue with his tremendously convincing performance in his title eliminator against very relevant contender Tyron Woodley. Now he's going to go to boxing and box up accredited boxer Jake Paul, which is a real feather in Colby's cap. But I mean, if we're going to take off the irony hat for a second, it sucks, but welterweight's in a weird place. I mean, Gilbert Burns just kind of proved himself to be a real contender at the division after, he got his own Woodley squash, a lot more convincing than Covington's, but, beating Wonderboy a lot more significant. And, Leon Edwards is out there 9-10 straight, something like that. But, the Nate fight.
He's canceled.
His claim. It sucks. I mean, I think he's a lot more compelling than Covington as a challenge for Usman, but sometimes shit just happens. But, I mean, Burns deserves a rematch more than Colby deserves a rematch at this point. It isn't really particularly close. Mm-hmm. So
you took your irony hat off, but my irony hat stays on during sex. But yeah, Colby Covington getting a rematch is pretty dumb. He's not like a weak contender just because the division doesn't have anyone like jumping out screaming saying this is definitely the guy. Like Leon should have been the guy, but he kind of screwed up by not completely shutting out Nate Diaz. He almost did, and then he screwed it up. And I understand holding that against him, honestly, because it was pretty underwhelming, disappointing that happened. He should probably still be getting the title shot. It is what it is. If you're doing a rematch, like you said, Burns makes sense. If you want to do it by like who did better against Usman, Colby made it further and didn't get
Burns
knocked out the same way, but Burns had more success just in a shorter amount of time. He kind of had a better performance, and people think that Colby did very well in the Usman fight, and I can kind of understand thinking that. But if you watched again, and you can actually go to the fight site on Patreon, my Kamaru Usman resume review, that's the final sequence, is I watched that fight, and I show all the ways that Usman was actually winning pretty handily. And I think what people miss is that Usman was countering him to the body super hard a lot, and that matters a ton. So Colby wasn't landing very clean very often at all. Those body shots were huge, and that was a pretty consistent theme. Usman definitely had some moments where his defense was just like standing there, and Colby got off some shots, but not a big hitter, and the volume really wasn't landing the way that people like to think it was. And it really wasn't close. I didn't score any rounds for Covington. There might have been 1 or 2 where there's like some semblance of an argument, but he wasn't winning the fight. He wasn't going to win the fight. And the way the fight ended was Usman just walking him down and throwing a 1-2 and cracking him. And honestly, Colby did no work the entire time to dissuade him from doing that, it was a cool performance. Like, it was a fun fight. It was annoying that Usman was like standing there, like trying to play counter when he could have done what he did at the end the entire time.
The whole time.
There was nothing stopping him from doing that. And I'm not exaggerating. There was literally nothing stopping him from doing that. So hopefully what I'm looking for in the rematch is either that he could wrestle more just to demonstrate that was a viable game plan the whole time, because Covington has been taken down by Woodley and RDA, and they are not the best wrestler in the division. Usman is. Who didn't get taken down by Woodley and RDA? Usman. But, he could wrestle and just kind of demonstrate that part of the matchup, or he could just do the easiest route and pressure and just throw straight and hit him, which I think he could do. So it's not particularly interesting in terms of like, oh my God, can Colby get him this time? No, I think Usman could fight the same exact fight and win it again. But if you have investment in Usman as a fighter, then it's like, okay, cool. Can he do better? And he should be able to do better. And maybe Covington's improved, but he didn't look improved versus Woodley. He looked worse, actually. So you would expect him to do better this time. Usman.
Yeah, I mean, Usman, for all the issues that I've had with his recent approach, not really pressure wrestling all that aggressively, boxing with guys who probably pose a little bit more danger there than in the clinch and on the ground. It's something that, like, he's improved his punching mechanics, he's improved his eye for counterpunching, and really, there was never any threat from Colby in terms of, like, wrestling. There just wasn't. It's not something that Colby can do to the level that Usman can, both in terms of physicality and, like, even just existing in the clinch. So I think this is just, it's like the Masvidal rematch, basically. It's like slightly more interesting, I guess, since Colby deserves it slightly more, but not all that much more interesting. So whatever. Welterweight's never been particularly inspiring to me, but it's kind of at a weird low point now with both of the, like, with the top contender having ruined his chance by getting punched a single time. It sucks. I hate it. But, whatever.
Whatever, indeed. So that's our reaction to that news. That's going to, I think, be the main driver of any negativity this week. Last week, it was because we didn't like Islam Makhachev's ranking. Although, I assume the people that were mad about that like him a lot as a fighter. I think we said very nice things about him as a fighter. Just didn't think the ranking process was very good. But, it's fine. I'm fine. You can't hurt my feelings. I'm not still thinking about it a week later, for sure. Anyway, let's move on from that topic because it's not a good one. I just want to remark on that. Cory Sandhagen, TJ Dillashaw. We talked a lot about this because we did commentary on the fight. You can listen to that commentary on any podcast platform under the Fight Site Podcast Network, or you can watch the fight with our commentary and, good quality, no lag, nice experience. That's on Patreon. $3 is the minimum tier that gets you all of the content, everything. And there's a lot. There's probably over 200 pieces of content there right now, and we're still building it up. So I definitely recommend hopping on there, checking out all the different things we have. It's a lot of me. So if you don't like me, I understand. Why
I don't.
why that would be discouraging, but there's other people too. And you probably haven't seen a lot of the stuff that's on there because you think, oh, I have the podcast subscription. Like, you put all that stuff on there anyway. Not all of it.
No.
Not all of it. You don't know. So check it out. And then obviously other tiers hold other benefits, but I'm not here to talk into that right now. Just watch our commentary. But anyway, our nice friend and patron Ronan said that was our best commentary ever. So maybe start with that one because apparently it was very good. So the fight, how are you feeling about it right now? What is the discourse about it right now? And then we can start to unpack some specific things.
Right. I rewatched it a couple of times since the thing. I may or may not be finishing up something I'm writing about it. It's a really complex fight that's like it, because most of the time I write about a fight, it tends to have like a really common thread throughout the fight that's easy to like go through because it's just way easier to write about things that way. This one, it's a very MMA fight, and the things show up and things disappear. But yeah, it was a tremendous fight. The discourse being about the scoring is kind of annoying because I think there's like a lot of things you can take away from that fight regardless of who won. If you take it as like a closely contested draw, I'm completely fine with that. And we can talk about Cory Sandhagen being very cool and TJ Dillashaw being one of the greatest of all time, coming back and going to a functional draw with a really young, really promising fighter. So yeah, I mean, the discourse being about the scoring, it's annoying. And it's even more annoying that people are doing it on like TJ's back control, which it didn't really matter for 1, and 2, it was a close fight even without that. So, like, let it go and shut up. But, yeah, like, if you look at the things that scored, TJ did quite a lot of it. Sandhagen may have done slightly more, but, TJ, a very gutsy veteran performance that deserves a lot of praise.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, we both ended up scoring it for Sandhagen live. I haven't rewatched it and done more scoring. I probably will sometime soon. Maybe even for the Bad Calls series that is also on Patreon, where I score fights.
Be a good call.
Yeah, it's a good call to listen to that. But yeah, I ended up scoring it for Sandhagen. He was outlanding TJ most rounds, and was knocking him around visibly, which in the impact criteria is pretty important. So that's definitely a factor. And his grappling was actually fairly impactful as well. Like he, hurt his leg with that heel hook, and was just doing good work off his back. Wasn't getting scored on very much when he was on bottom. In those rear standing positions where TJ had his back against the cage, he didn't score, obviously, in those positions, but TJ didn't score a lot. He was throwing pretty small knees, and I was upset about that because I'm like, what's stopping you from really going to town? And it turned out he had the pretty bad list of injuries. I'm like, okay, they could limit your movement, but what kind of freaking guy has injuries to the point where he can't like level change the way he wants, or like put hooks in the back, like can't bring his leg all the way back to throw a knee, but still fights like he fights, you know what I mean? Like he's still like shifting and slipping and like doing all this stuff. And like, it makes sense that he didn't kick above the knee very much. He kicked the body a few times very effectively and kind of let off on it. He got caught once and didn't seem to like how that felt. So with the injuries in hindsight, actually his performance makes so much more sense. Even without that, I was really impressed. I didn't think he looked shot or washed or anything like that. I think it was just a really difficult matchup against someone durable and long, someone who could punish his defensive habits. I thought he was a goner for sure, because at that one point where he rocked him, just throwing out those feeler jabs, had TJ going through the sequence of head movement, walked him into that hook at the end of it. I was like, oh my God, he's gonna do that to him all night. And TJ made the adjustment that we were talking about. We're like, okay, if he can. Well, what I wanted was shorter exchanges. Like, you don't have to stick around and like wade through his jabs had to get something off. You can either hit your slip counter or whatever you want to do right away, hit your short entry, or get out. You know what I mean? And he ended up pulling the trigger sooner, was his adaptation. Being more aggressive, pulling the trigger sooner, not waiting around trying to find the perfect moment, and that ended up being great for him. And that allowed him to back Sandhagen up more. And that really opened up his low kicking too. He got really aggressive with his low kicking. I think he learned that lesson from the Cruz fight, that if you got a lanky guy that's hard to hit, you should boot his legs out.
Kick the leg, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was super impressed. I think so on rewatch, and this didn't come to me the first time because it's kind of a stupid comparison, but on rewatch, what it kind of reminded me of was Robert Whittaker versus Darren Till, because a lot of what TJ does, right? It's, get in and out, really fast entries, really quick exits on angles. And here against Sandhagen, there were a lot of points where he really needed to commit on the entry and like lunge in. And there were a lot of points he looked like a parody of Joseph Benavidez, basically. And it's tough to fight like Joseph Benavidez when you are not, in fact, Joseph Benavidez. There are a lot of points where you're like, hey, why don't you hit the body more? Well, it's tough to really confidently go to the body when you need to reach and shift on everything. And you're shifting in a completely different context to the way that you're doing, and duck in, and against someone who's been known for throwing crazy flying knees on the counter.
And he did.
It's tough. Yeah. Like we saw that several times in this fight as well. So I understand why he didn't do some of the things he did, because it looked like a tough matchup. And a lot of the things that Dillashaw did to adjust to that, apart from, fighting like Joseph Benavidez, pulling the trigger on the counters earlier, was a lot of the adaptations that Robert Whittaker did himself, which is kick more, kick on the outside, draw the retreats and kick him as he left. Lots of transitional work, which is actually really nice. Like, he didn't really work off the rear standing position itself that much. But when Sandhagen escaped, he did a lot of nice work getting the collar ties and hitting elbows, tying up the wrist and hitting elbows. For his part, Sandhagen, I mean, he's much better than Darren Till, so obviously it was a closer fight. But I really like a lot of Sandhagen's work too. I never really thought of him as like a really strong counterpuncher. I think it's like solid, but a lot of it's dependent on like what TJ does as well. which is draw out a reaction that you know is coming on the lead with like a feint or a throwaway, and then take advantage instead of like really taking advantage of a guy charging in at you. But Sandhagen did a good job, really needled him with counters moving in, used his length super well on those jabs to move him around and hit him with the rear hook. Played the rear straight and the rear hook off each other and went to the body with that as well. So like TJ, his defense has never been really all that, so it makes sense that it worked really well. But still, it's a smart offensive way to fight. One thing I really liked was the way that Sandhagen started playing off the hands later in the fight, because we noted this on the commentary, right? TJ started going to a high guard a little bit more when the cut started getting really annoying to him, and he didn't want to get jabbed and hooked there a bunch. So he started just, covering up on one side. And each time that happened, after a certain point, Sandhagen just started grabbing the hand, dragging it physically away, throwing straights. At one point, he dragged it away and threw a straight into a body hook, which was really nice. But at the end of the fight, TJ actually started using that against Sandhagen, because Sandhagen grabbed the hand and TJ just shot underneath it to get an easy takedown entry. Mm-hmm. So lots of little interactions like that. TJ's mind still one of the best in the game when it comes to those little sorts of tactical exchanges. I don't really think you can point to anything his decline. His conditioning looked really good. He was super, super durable. And Sandhagen just looked like a tough fight.
Yeah, honestly, his wrestling is the thing that looked the most different. But not his entries. His entries look pretty normal. Because he's never been like a super severe level changer, which is what would have been tougher on his knees and back. But yeah, with the finishes on the shots, he was making Sandhagen look really strong. So that was the read that I was picking up, because without knowing TJ's injured, like in these positions, he looked really hard to move. TJ looked like he was having a really hard time, crunching the legs together, essentially. When he was anywhere standing, when Sandhagen was grip fighting, he looked like he was having a lot of success grip fighting and pummeling. And he just looked a lot stronger grappling than I'd ever seen him look before. Like a Sun Tzu looked like the much stronger guy. Like Sterling obviously looked like the much stronger guy. Yeah. And TJ is a freaking beast, you know what I mean? So
crazy athlete.
He's very strong. So I was surprised. And I was like, did Sandhagen get stronger or just like better in these situations? Because I think he was doing better a little bit than he normally does. But I saw plenty of opportunities where TJ would have put hooks in, or boots in, you might say, in wrestling traditionally, because he loves to do that. And he didn't do it at all. And I was like, that must be part of the game plan, or just with age, he doesn't want to do it as much. But yeah, afterwards, talking about the injuries, the way that it limited his wrestling made the most sense. But yeah, Sandhagen, like, same issues, honestly. Like, he punishes entries pretty well because he keeps distance, right? He's an okay anti-wrestler. His ring craft, I thought, for a lot of the fight looked really good. He was making really sharp exits close to the cage, cutting angles, moving fast laterally. He wasn't galloping around. You know what I mean? It was all very intentional and pretty well executed. But with the small cage, you can't really afford too much space. You can't afford to not have a lot of space behind you, between you and the cage. So TJ was able to drive him back on his shots, and wasn't even shooting on his legs anymore at a certain point. It was just going high in the hips and driving him straight back into the fence. And, you can transition from that level change and get on the legs. And he just kind of abandoned doing that because Sandhagen pathologically turns and goes rear standing because he just wants to fight hands, or if they're in space, like Grand B Funk, whatever. So it's the same stuff that got him in trouble versus Sterling. He hasn't adapted that very much, which is disappointing because it's obviously a huge issue. And if he had done his homework on TJ, he would have known that was a really bad idea, or he's been drilling not getting his back taken, like had some answer for that. But like, that's not really a good way to be. On the commentary, I'm okay with him just kind of getting better at this way that he fights in terms of defending wrestling and grappling. But you can only go so far with it. You shouldn't be letting people take your back and then trying to have some sort of counter to that. Like, you need to be better from that position if you're going to go there all the time. And he's not good enough from that position for it to be a thing. And it's not like this division's getting any less wrestlers over time. It's like, that's not going to stop being an issue. So yeah, you can have your flying knee counters, you can have your distance control, you can have your ring craft, but like, if someone just takes a good entry on you and that's it, they're on your back and they're going to put hooks in, and then could be a huge loss of control or a submission potentially. Like, it's a really big issue. So that really hurt my feelings because he looks so good otherwise. You know what I mean? He's a really smart striker. TJ, exposed some holes as well. Nothing that we didn't totally know already. We did predict the kicking matchup. Oh my God, we didn't gloat. Let's do that. True. Talk about your read first in the commentary. Tell me what you said before the fight started.
Yeah, so right before the fight, I said that TJ's big trend in the opponents that he faced were that they tended to keep a fairly short range. Rafael Assunção, for instance, he's pretty small for a bantamweight even, which is surprising since he used to be a featherweight. Cody Garbrandt is taller than TJ, but fights like a really, really short person, maybe because he has stupidly tiny arms. John Lineker is another one. I mean, Dominic Cruz was probably the guy who extended the range against TJ the most. And we saw in a lot of that fight, TJ was kind of chasing him like an idiot. He didn't really keep his composure all that well. And Sandhagen, he was like a whole head taller than TJ, which, I mean, we saw in the fight, TJ could recontextualize his shifting to really track Sandhagen down. And I think that was probably the bigger issue with Sandhagen's ring craft, is that there are a lot of linear retreats. We saw him straight punching and stepping right back. But TJ was able to just continue the exchanges, hit him, and then Sandhagen would just hit him back. There wasn't any sort of limitation there, the way that Sandhagen was fighting. He was just, willing to concede the trade, just hitting him at the same time. But yeah, that's what I saw, was that if TJ's game wasn't super tuned to fighting taller guys, because it'd take a lot more commitment on entries, and that commitment on entries would slow down the exits, then it'd be tough. And we did see several examples of that, because when I remember at least one exchange where TJ lunged in with this big left overhand. He ended up completely squared up and tried to exit, but all he could do was lean back ugly, and Sandhagen just turned and cracked him before he could leave. So I brought up Whitaker versus Till. That was kind of a Whitaker Adesanya type thing there, but yeah, I mean, it turned out weirdly prescient for a read that I had 30 seconds before it started.
That's happened a bunch of times, right before the fight starts. We're talking about, we're doing a mini preview, a mini breakdown, right, during the walkouts, and we'll come up with some new stuff that we didn't say before, and then it ends up being really important. Last podcast, I said I would not gloat about TJ wrestling Cory Sandhagen because it's not that crazy of a read. It makes a lot of sense if you've watched them fight. But what I am proud of was the kicking thing. Saying that, and honestly, just to come clean, it's just because I watched the Lineker fight that week and Lineker was kicking him a lot. I'm if Lineker is kicking you a lot, you look pretty kickable, my man. He's getting those off for free. So as TJ's a good kicker, TJ learned a lesson from the Cruz fight. I think he can limit his exchanges, and if he is chinny, if he can't afford to fight the way he normally does, he can kick him a ton, and that ended up being pretty true. So I'll gloat about that a little bit. Also, just that I picked DJ. That's worth bragging about a little bit. I don't think he won, but he got the win, so that makes me look a little better. But yeah, it was a really cool fight. I'm really happy about it. Neither guy got hurt, really, which is always nice because I like them both. I understand not liking TJ because he's a tool and he did EPO. So if you care about if your fighter is a douchebag, or if they do steroids, then I totally get not liking him. But that makes me like him more, actually, because what I like about him is he's nasty. He's a nasty jerk. Yeah. Super, super crazy competitive, and it comes through in his fights. And it's if you like the whole personality is fighter style thing, he's the best one. He's the best one. He is that guy, and he's just freaking ferocious. So I mean, I hate him. I think I don't like him at all as a person. But as a fighter, it's very likable for me because I like people who try really hard and don't give up and make adaptations and leverage their advantages and do all the things that he does. So I like him, and Cory Sandhagen is very likable. It's very easy to like him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with TJ is that there are several performances where you can really tell why, he not hates the other guy, but you can tell how hard he's trying. I mean, Garbrandt might have been one where he legitimately
he hates that they're trying to beat him.
Venom.
It's extremely rude of them.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, against Barao, he was I hate that I'm this big of an underdog, and he just went in and took as much damage as he had to just, take his prime and just chop him up. And Sandhagen was one where there was this one exchange, I think it was right at the beginning of the second or the third. Sandhagen enters with a straight, TJ slips it. Sandhagen grabs his wrist as he leaves and turns around, and TJ just not a second of hesitation, just socks him right in the back of the head with a straight. It was amazing. I loved it.
I think he threw a combination in the back. I think he hit him twice in the back.
Just the man does not care, and it's amazing. Like I compared him to Robert Whittaker, but they could not be more different as people.
No.
And like you can even say that they're very similar in terms of like you could tell how hard they tried to stay sharp through the layoff. Like TJ, he was working, and you could really tell.
Mm-hmm.
He did not look slow for a second. Like Dominic Cruz put it on the commentary that ring rust doesn't exist, and this was a very cruisy in return for him.
Yeah, I mean the guy is a maniac. He trains all year. He trains like an animal, and I'm sure being on lots of steroids helps with that. That's why you do them. And he's an all-time great. He's one of the top 10 greatest fighters of all time. So you have to root for that, I think. And, he still has a lot of time left. People get confused about primes because they look at age. But I mean, he took that, he had that time off. He took the time off. He was forced into having time off. But, maybe he was training pretty hard, but it's not like he was accruing damage. Like people don't really understand why fighters age the way they do. It's miles. How many miles are you putting on your body? What are you doing? Extreme weight cutting? Are you having crazy sparring wars in practice? And yes, TJ has done both of those things a lot, but he wasn't doing it for 2 years. So I didn't expect him to age a lot in between this time. But anyway, it was awesome that he pulled such a great performance out of himself with the matchup that was so clearly bad for him. And Sandhagen showed his level. He's great. He's really good. He's an elite fighter. He has some holes that really bother me, but I think he can do well in the future. I think, match him up with somebody who's a little less threatening that can pose similar issues, some level of grappler. You know what I mean? Honestly, what would be amazing is if he fought Chito Vera in a 5-rounder. That would be very cool. But
that'd be incredible. Yeah.
I got no ideas otherwise. But yeah, TJ might be sitting for a title fight. He's a name, so the UFC is probably going to use him in that way. But if not, like Aldo Munoz winner or like Font or somebody like that, you can't really go wrong matching up the top 5 or 6 bantamweights. It's going to be good no matter what. Yeah,
the word is that TJ is waiting on a title shot, which makes sense. Yeah. Sterling TJ 2 or Sterling Yen 2 rather is like in October or something, I believe. Which far. That's soon enough. Yeah, it's far, but it's soon enough for TJ to wait for a bit after that injury. Yeah. Sandhagen's already called for the Rob Font fight, which I think that makes a lot of sense. It's a really interesting fight too, just because with how much Sandhagen relies on his length in this fight. Font could be a uniquely tricky fight for him at bantamweight. Another really huge bantamweight, very jabby,
rangy puncher.
Pretty much, similar durability, similar cardio, similar volume. Maybe a bit more keen on enforcing his ringcraft dynamic because Font knows he's good as a long-range pressurer. Sandhagen doesn't really seem to settle into that role unless it's like given to him, which could make the difference. But yeah, I think Sandhagen's super promising. He's still only like 7 or 8 years into his career, which is wild. You should not be competing with this level of TJ Dillashaw that soon into your career. It does not make any sense. So, yeah, it was a very promising loss. I came out of it thinking, pretty much the same of him. It was a stronger counterpunching performance that I'm used to seeing from him, as I mentioned. His wrestling looked fine compared to what it used to look like. If Sterling was the prospect loss, this was the contender loss, and those happen, so it is what it is.
Cory Sandhagen has only been a pro 1 year less than Peter Yan, 2014 and 2015.
Insane.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. And one last thing on this fight is you made a lot of Robert Whittaker comparisons with TJ. Who else did that? Conor Rebush. He did that a ton recently, so there you go. You guys are on the same page about that. All right.
Well, there's the knee injury, too.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels. Maybe Whittaker is secretly a bad person.
Oh no!
Nah, that's impossible. Okay, we spent a lot of time there. Let's go hyperspeed. But Raulian Paiva, that's your boy. You were high on him. You were talking him up. He looked like a giant idiot against Kyler Phillips, to be honest with you. And that fight probably should have been a draw. He really sold out on his win condition. I'll give him that. His win condition was to gas this dude out and walk him down, and he did that, fully accepting the consequences.
To perfection. Yeah, I mean, I think Paiva Phillips is actually kind of a weirdly unique fight in that you can really see, like, one is this really tight formalist type fighter where Kyler Phillips is like completely crazy and does nothing right, but like you could see, right, like he strikes like he's Jan Blachowicz. I can't believe I'm the only one who said that, but he can jab and everything else he does is a shift. He steps in behind a straight. He steps in behind everything. He like blitzes in off his kicks, and everything he does aside from the jab takes up half the cage. It's insane. And Paiva started countering him like 20 seconds into the fight, but I expected a bigger fighter who was really fast and like committed to covering distance to give Paiva a lot of trouble, and he did. Paiva got 10-7 in the first round just based on Phillips like countering him really
walking
hard with
into
right
stuff.
hands. Yeah. And like Phillips, he looked solid in that round in terms of like the ideas he had, lots of fun intercepting elbows and stepping in with elbows and spinning heel kicks or whatever. But it also showed the downside of being that much of a loose, wild, stupid fighter with a stupid skill set, which is that you gas out. Kyler Phillips had no idea how to do a single thing efficiently. He gassed out against Song Yadong too. It's just that he didn't have the chance to really dump the tank on Song Yadong because Song Yadong didn't very shrewdly allow himself to be finished nearly like 7 times in the first round. So that's I think Raulian Paiva doesn't really have a high ceiling, but I love watching him. He's tons of fun, insanely durable. His offensive boxing, it's a treat to watch. Lots of combinations on the counter and body work. By the third round, it was like it was literally Phillips would hit him with like a really hard counter. Paiva would just eat it clean and just drown him in combination work afterwards. It was insane. I mean, I'd like to see Paiva against someone a bit higher ranked. They did not put him in the rankings for beating the number 14. They just pulled him from the flyweight rankings, which is not very nice. But, it makes sense. Phillips did not look like the super prospect that we were promised. But Paiva looks like someone who could pull at least a fun fight out of pretty much anybody at bantamweight. So, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to see him against someone like he was calling for a Sun Sao like the whole week since Phillips was supposed to fight a Sun Sao and Paiva was filling in for him. So, I mean, that'd be a fight that's worth making, I think. Something like Chito Vera, since both are just insanely durable and do not care. That's another one. But, yeah, Paiva's tons of fun.
Yeah, Paiva I was so angry. Like he was like having success and like he had some good takedown entries. He got to rear standing and he dropped for a leg lock. I'm like, bro, this guy just top gamed you like not that long ago. He's a good grappler. He's a better grappler than you, honestly. Kyler Phillips is a very good grappler. I was really impressed by him, especially that Kimura to switch transition. That was so cool.
Yeah.
But he's a better grappler than you. Don't pull guard. And he pulled guard and but he ended up getting back to his feet. But he just over and over again, man, just threw himself into terrible positions. But he did start hitting the body. He did start capitalizing on everything. And I get being high on Kyler Phillips because the aggregate skill set is very impressive. But yeah, it's just it doesn't hold up well over 3 rounds. And then it's like, can you really get excited about a guy that can't finish out a 3-rounder?
Yeah.
No, you can't. So
yes, there's a big problem.
Yeah, but as like a guy in the division, cool. I like him. Keep him around. Darren Elkins did it again. That was annoying because I definitely thought Derek Minner was going to beat him. So I don't like being wrong. And he was winning, and then he hit a wall so hard. I have not seen that happen many times where a guy didn't look tired and then he collapsed.
He just
and he was
becomes,
done. I have not seen that happen too many times, but that was an example of hitting a wall.
Yeah.
The fight didn't look that intense,
energy intensive,
but you don't know what the dynamics are of like how hard is he squeezing, how hard is he have to push off, and there's like an adrenaline dump and you like lose all strength in your arms. Like I understand the feeling, but I just didn't expect it to happen. I believe Minner initiated the grappling.
Yeah, Minner, I think it was like right at the beginning of round 2, Minner took him down like instantly, just blitzed out and took him down.
But in the first round too, that was the game plan to out grapple him. I'm like, you're a good grappler. So I get why you think that, but you also saw him get knocked around by Ryan Hall. And that should have been a bigger clue of what to do than to grapple with him. Like if you're a good grappler and wrestler, then you should probably be able to keep it standing long
Hold
enough
him
to
off
knock him out, because you trained at James Krause's gym, so I know you know how to strike and hurt people, but whatever. Like, why am I invested in Darren Elkins versus Derek Minner? And what? It's fine. But yeah, Darren Elkins has been encouraged to continue fighting because he won, and I think he should retire.
I do not recommend
for
that.
sure.
Yeah.
He should have retired after the Hall fight because he's getting rocked by Ryan Hall, man.
Yeah,
that's not good. And I mean, his whole thing is that he's taken a ton of damage, and he always has. But like, that's not good. Shouldn't do that. What am I to tell Darren Elkins what to do? What is he going to do after this? Sell real estate? Maybe.
Yeah. He's going to fight Max Holloway. That's an option. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that fight. Main card, I think after this was Yanez and Costa, right? That was tons of fun.
That was dope. And we did a commentary on that one too. And assuming it holds up, I'm in his DMs. I might be interviewing Adrian Yanez, which is going to be pretty cool as well. And we'll talk about the fight and some other cool stuff. So look forward to that. But yeah, check out that commentary. But the main thing I was really impressed by from Costa was his pressure game plan was cool. And I think it's tough because he doesn't look totally built to last. If that makes sense. Like, it didn't look like he was going to be able to continue that game plan for very long or under duress. But if he had taken the back foot, that skill deficit, not like taking the back foot, but not pressured super hard right away, Yanez would have put him on the back foot and probably done exactly what he did to him sooner. So you have to do that. But yeah, I liked the ideas. Like, obviously he's super jab heavy, but he used his dexterous kicking, like his kicking advantage that he has over everyone pretty much, that he can kick that way, to just throw up a lot of dangerous kicks around the guard to the sides, on both sides, to discourage slipping, to put Yanez's head in one place and then jabbed him up. And that was cool. But what changed?
Yeah, I enjoyed the fight a lot. I think Costa also did a nice job drawing out Yanez's counters and countering back, which was nice. He only did it like once or twice, but Yanez also wasn't super active on the counter early. What changed? I think you could point to a couple things. One, Costa's leg seeming to be a little bit fragile.
I saw them shaking, trembling.
It was weird. Yanez started hitting that like Jones type oblique stomp thing. That, like, it looks weird and not super powerful necessarily, but like Costa was walking into it, so it looked nasty. At least one of them like hyperextended it pretty badly from what we could see, so that was an issue. But it was really more just Yanez like gaining some initiative and like really pushing Costa back. And when he did that, he could draw out the jab, start cross countering, and Costa gassed out pretty badly once he was put on the back foot. Yanez did a really nice job putting together combos and jabbing with Costa later in the fight. I think DC pointed it out, which was a good idea because, that's one of the few reads DC really
good for him, man.
That was good.
Proud of him.
Yeah, I'm proud of him. Good stuff. But yeah, Yanez started out jabbing him later in the fight, and he built a lot more off it because Costa's defense was a lot less active than Yanez's. Yanez had like this kind of shoulder rolly thing. It didn't really look all that great or effective, but it was something that really kept Costa from just like teeing off on him with impunity. Where Costa, he sort of showed up with a high guard pretty early in the second round, I believe. Yanez started carving it up, going to the body, hooking around it. He had like this really weird sort of looping right hand where like it was pretty tight, but he would like go around it and hit with the wrist, which it looked really painful to him. But
looks like more painful for Costa.
Yeah, I mean, it hurt him at least once or twice. I think it hurt him twice. I hit him at least once and like got him like sitting down in the chair. But yeah, Yanez eventually went to the body to try to open up the guard. Costa did not open up the guard. Yanez just uppercut through his hands anyway. But yeah, fun fight. Yanez looks promising in more ways than one, right? He looks like he has a fairly deep technical toolbox that Costa didn't really let him show until the end. And he looks like someone who can really overcome adversity in fights that aren't necessarily going his way. Like, I don't know if showing adversity against Randy Costa is like a great sign moving forward, but Costa fought the right fight.
He's dangerous.
He looked like a solid fighter. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton to like about Adrian Yanez. I'd like to see him fight into the rankings now, honestly. Yeah. Someone like Jimmy Rivera might be interesting if super, super tough. But there are a ton of options for him. He looks exciting. Yeah.
Cool. They're very cool. The prelims only had 2 decisions. Did you watch them, and what did you like that you saw?
I watched some of the prelims. First things first, Julio Arce, the most important fighter in the world. Yeah, Arce Ewell, I enjoyed that fight a lot. I think it had some of the usual southpaw weirdness, where a lot of it's just like, for instance, Arce, a lot of what he does with the jab is he uses the jab on the lead, like step to outside angles and line up the left hand to the head of the body and like angle out. I guess another southpaw is a little bit more complex, even if the jab should be able to like set other things up. But it wasn't any less jabby of a performance from Julio Arce. It was just more counter jabbing performance, where a lot of what Ewell wants to do, right, is to step in with the jab and just put together these like shifty combos, or just be really fast, be a bantamweight Michael Johnson basically. And Arce just intercepted him with the jab every single time. Ewell couldn't put anything together. He just walked into the jab several times. He couldn't really, even when he got inside, Arce was a lot more active with his head movement on the inside, countered him. Ewell had to take the back foot. And Arce did a really nice job just hurting him into the left hand. Like the stoppage was weird, I agree, but it did not look like a fight that was ever going to go Ewell's way. Arce did a really nice job using like a right leg, like sort of step up high kick or a body kick to get Ewell moving towards his own rear side. And he just pelted him through that rear side. One really hard one to the body, and eventually just cut him off on the exit with the one to the head that led to the finish. Just it was a terrific performance, especially considering that like a longer fellow southpaw jabber might be an annoying way for Arce to make his debut at bantamweight. And I expect him to look a lot more exciting moving forward, but he should be moving forward to something a bit more fun. I'd like to see him fight, I don't know, Kyler Phillips or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Step into the rankings somewhere close.
That makes sense to me. I'm cool to actually not talk about this card anymore because we have some more things to discuss, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
All right, cool. The Bellator card. So Bellator sometimes puts on some nonsense events, and it's tough. I talked about this. So basically this week, I did resume review. I posted it before we started recording this. Resume review is a series where I prove a fighter is great by showing why the fighters they beat are good. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. And I did it for Patricio Pitbull this week. Bellator's double champ, featherweight and lightweight, I believe, which is awesome because he beat good fighters to do it. And I looked at his fights with Pat Curran and Daniel Strauss, and they were, first of all, the Pat Curran fight, it was the second fight between them, was one of the best fights
Tremendous
I've ever seen. Honestly, it was amazing. So please check out that commentary, listen to it, find the fight. Actually, it's going to be difficult because Ryan had to like download it from a torrent and send it to me with Russian commentary for me to be able to see it. It was hard to find. Honestly, it's worth $3 just to watch that fight. Wasn't amazing quality, but it was good enough. You can definitely watch and appreciate it. And I was having a blast recording that one. And I watched the Strauss fights, a couple of them. And Strauss, not nearly as skilled as Pat Curran, but actually more skilled than you might expect, with a really big emphasis on how to leverage his physical attributes and challenge Pitbull in different ways and really limit Pitbull's game. So they both challenged him a ton. And these were two fighters that impressed me a lot. And Pitbull dealt with them brilliantly. Like they gave him like really real threats, and he can do everything. He can really do everything. He's so dangerous in the lead. He's so dangerous in the counter. He's a really good wrestler. He hit this amazing hip over counter on Strauss, who's a good wrestler. Strauss shot it on him against the cage, and right away he was circling out, got Strauss at a bad angle, pulled back, put Strauss on his knees, and hit this hip over into mount from the whizzer. It was amazing. Great grappler. He can really do everything. In recent memory, he's changed his style a little bit because, with age, you have to fight a little bit differently. And I think the main thing that he's changed is he doesn't want to have as many exchanges because he's been hurt. He's had some wars, and he doesn't want to do that as much. So he's adopted a longer stance, more of a karate style, and it's allowing him to move differently and create better exits and be more elusive. And but he still has the same exact skill set, just his approach is a little bit more exchange limiting, which I think is going to suit him well. It's a style that's very physically and athletically dependent. So I wouldn't want him to stick around too long if he's showing any signs of decline. But the way he is right now is fantastic.
It's scary.
So I say all that because I really think that he's one of the best fighters in the world. If he was in the UFC, he'd be a title challenger at least, not automatically either. Like if he had to fight contenders, I think he would be there. In terms of greatness, he's very great. I ended up moving him into the top 20 of all time because of his resume, how strong it is. I'm really impressed with him. So the reason I say all this is because he's legit. He's the real deal. He's someone that deserves a lot of respect. If he loses this fight, it doesn't matter because he's had this whole career. He's 32-4. He's had a long career where he's been very accomplished and proven himself over and over and over again how good he is and how great he is. And Bellator treats him the same as like Julia Budd. It's really annoying.
Yeah, it's awful.
They treat all of their talent, in quotes, like they're all world beaters, and some of them are close, some of them are,
some of them deserve,
and
more.
Most of them aren't. So for their viewers, they're like, this guy's a 2-weight champ, which is easy marketing, obviously, so you can communicate it better then. But this entire time leading up to now, they're just like, this is the featherweight champion, this is the lightweight champion, this is the welterweight champion. Douglas Lima could beat Usman. Like, no, like there's a huge difference between Douglas Lima and Patricio Pitbull. Patricio Pitbull is someone that you could definitely discount his abilities.
Bad. Yeah, Patricio's awful. But I mean, I agree with all that. I haven't seen as much of Patricio as I've wanted to. I watched the Curran fight earlier, and it's tremendous. Curran looked like in the edge scale, like an 85 plus, he looked fantastic.
I gave him a 90. I was really blown away.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see justifying that. I wasn't on
Ryan
that episode,
didn't fight me on it. That's when you know it's legit because Ryan is very harsh.
Conservative. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Patricio Pitbull is tremendous. Knocked out Michael Chandler, which is impressive in its own right because he did it better than Charles Oliveira
better and
did.
Faster. Yeah.
Never got hurt. Just cross-countered him instantly. AJ McKee, I've seen very little of him as well. I remember watching the Darren Caldwell fight where he won with like
100%.
The 100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was cool. I mean, I don't really know if it transfers over when you're fighting a really strong grappler. But, I mean, Darren Caldwell, he was a strong top player in his own right for a long time, right? And AJ McKee got him with it. So it might not be consistent, but it's something he can do. Looks like a crazy athlete. Looks very big, explosive, strong. I don't really know a ton about his skill set because that's the only fight I watched. And I remember it being fairly short. But, it should be a fun fight. I mean, at least athletically, it's a challenge. If Patricio, I always mix. I don't like mix them up when it comes to who they are. But when I say their names, it always comes out mixed up. I hate it. But Patricio's the bad one. Patricio is the good one. But if Patricio is slowing down even a bit, I think it might represent a little bit of trouble. But I don't really see it being too tough of a challenge if he's still looking good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, AJ McKee is someone I know more about than I would in other circumstances, but because of that whole Joey Davis thing that I did, I ended up having to learn a lot about Antonio McKee and therefore AJ. AJ briefly wrestled at the same college as Joey as well, and he won a couple of California like junior college national titles they call them, but they're state titles in college, which is a very rare thing to have. But it's impressive still. If there's a state for that to happen, and that's the one. Juan Archuleta actually has the same pedigree. And Antonio McKee is actually the greatest of all time in that system. He was undefeated and very good. Anyway, AJ McKee, very talented, been basically training MMA his entire life because of Antonio McKee. Wrestling was just kind of a thing on the way. He never really wanted to be a wrestler. But there's like interviews you can see that if you ever heard the stories like Ronda Rousey's mom waking her up in the middle of the night by like armbarring her. That was AJ McKee's life too. Like that's Antonio McKee was always doing that shit to him. So he's been living it the whole time. And I think, with just constant repetition and a lot of hard work and putting it in, you're going to become a very good grappler. Like striking is very idea centric. Like you need to have good ideas and be smart and or have one good idea.
Super athletic.
Yeah, there needs to be certain things that work out for you to be a good striker. But grappling is really something you can just apply the time to and get good instruction and become very good. And that's something that's happened here. So AJ McKee, I believe in him a lot as a grappler. I don't think he's going to submit Patricio Pitbull, but I think he can hang. I think he can hang for sure. Pat Curran hit a really nice hip bump sweep off the Kimura, which is a relatively basic move, but it just kind of spoke to Pat Curran's physicality. And I think AJ McKee is very physical as well, a great athlete. So great grappler, great athlete, long and rangy. So long and rangy is something that gave Pitbull trouble in both the fights I watched. Curran, who is lanky and a former lightweight, and Strauss, who is gigantic, really, really big. So the way that they played with range, the length that they can get on their punches, just, when you're a counter puncher and people keep you on the end of their punches and you can't reach them on your counters, that's hard.
It's annoying.
But I'm going to go out on a limb, just from what I've seen. AJ McKee is a willing striker. He has power. He can do things. But he's not the kind of striker that any of those guys were. I'd say he's even a worse striker than Daniel Strauss, who isn't bad, actually. He's actually pretty decent. But yeah, I don't think AJ McKee's much of a striker. I think that's probably the biggest concern for his chances, is that you need to be a good striker if you're going to fight Pitbull, unless you have a really big, pronounced wrestling advantage. I think he can take him down. I don't think he's going to hold him down. So he's going to have to strike with him for pretty long periods, and he could catch him. He could definitely catch him. Pitbull's defense is not perfect, but over time, it is too good to be not elite on your feet. Let's just say that. Just a really, really good triggers on his counters, and in the lead. It's funny. He doesn't do anything fancy in the lead, really. He'll just come in with really, really normal combinations, but he moves really well. He hits really hard. He has a lot of power, and he can sneak stuff through your guard, around your guard. Like he'll find you. He'll find your shin. The Curran fight was insane, mostly for the reason that Curran was fighting this amazing fight every round, and then Pitbull was like, all right, time to lead. And he cracked him. He rocked him whenever he tried. And it was like, what? How did you? So obviously that was years ago, and things are a little bit different now. But I think he's even more dialed in, chooses his moments more carefully, is more defensively responsible. He's a really tough matchup for literally anyone. So I like AJ McKee. I'm not totally down on his chances, but this is like a pound for pound type of guy that you're fighting. So I hyped him up a lot. So if AJ McKee wins, and it's not because Pitbull looks like he's old, then I will give him so much credit.
Lots of props.
Let's move on to the co-main event. If you have nothing else to say, if you do, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't.
All right.
I don't.
You take the lead on the co-main. I've been talking.
One sec. Actually, my window closed.
It's Mads Burnell versus Emmanuel Sanchez.
Oh yeah, okay. Mads Burnell I know a lot about because I watched the Arnold Allen fight a ton of times right after that happened. And actually to now, because the fact that they cut him is awful. But yeah, Mads Burnell, super promising striker, grappler. Like the fact that he turned out to be such a great striker is surprising to everybody because pretty much when he came in, I think he got laid on by like Michel Prazeres. And everyone was like, hey, he came in heavy and Prazeres just kind of bigged him. So that's not very promising. But Arnold Allen was supposed to be like this, really promising prospect. He's actually turned out to be pretty good. And Mads Burnell, really pressured him. Did a lot of really nice playing and striking entries off his takedowns. Lots of like this folding guard and like coming forward, really hunched over and like ducking into takedowns. Fun grappling. And he got caught right at the end of the fight with like this, like a front choke type thing. It wasn't like exactly a guillotine, but it was like he got his neck caught and Arnold Allen crossing his arms defiantly. Yeah, it was a sad ending just because Arnold Allen was a fighter who like none of us really rated at that point. At this point, he looks like a bit sharper than I think we thought he was. But Mads Burnell looked like the better fighter there. And Mads Burnell, I think he had like one more win in the UFC, won like 1-2 over some guy like Santiago, I think. But yeah, he looks very promising. I think he had a couple fights elsewhere. He went to Bellator like right away and looked very solid. So, I mean, I'm excited for him. What do you think, Ed?
Yeah, I'm also a believer in Emmanuel Sanchez. A small part of the reason that Pitbull's resume is so good is he beat him twice.
Yeah.
Even Ryan thinks Sanchez is pretty good, and he's from Rufus Sport. And Ryan hates everyone from Rufus Sport, but he likes Sanchez, probably because his guard game is a lot more functional. I mean, he's very similar to Pettis in the way that he actually has a good guard and like is a good grappler. And like, it is kind of a viable strategy for him sometimes to play off his back, but he's also good at creating motion and like not hanging out for long periods of time. But yeah, he's great. And Pitbull submitted him like immediately. He rocked him and then he submitted him, but it was nuts. But anyway, he's got a cool little process on his feet. He's a good outfighter. He uses his left kick actually to go high and like place the guard and like punch, like jab through the guard, and like has all sorts of little kickboxing tricks. Great chin, great cardio, puts up volume, fairly decent defensively. I mean, like he didn't get killed by Pitbull in their first fight. He went 5 with them. It was a good fight. So I like him. I think he's really solid. And it's going to be a really good fight, I think, because on the feet, I think he's going to challenge Mads because he can throw a lot up the middle, which is probably the biggest hole with his
Arnold
with the
cross
arm
had
guard.
Some success doing that.
Yeah, like coming up the middle, coming like straight through, can be pretty good, especially being a heavy kicker, which he's pretty kick heavy. That can challenge him as well. Mads is going to be blending those moments of movement and defense on the feet into his takedown entries. Sanchez can challenge him with counter submissions, and when they start grappling, I think it's just going to be good. I think it's just going to be good stuff when they start grappling. So I think it's going to be a great fight. If Mads wins, he'll probably fight for the title, because that's like the guy that just fought for the title. That's who he's fighting. So that's pretty awesome, and I'm really looking forward to that one. If you don't watch any more of this card, just watch those top 2 fights.
The top 2,
they're great.
Yeah,
but there are other names to look out for. Usman Nurmagomedov is fighting at lightweight. In the fight before that, I do not know the guy he's fighting at all, Manny Moro. But Usman Nurmagomedov is not someone I've studied, but whenever the people that are more into like the regional MMA scene in Russia, like not ACA, like the smaller leagues, like like what is it, Young
M1.
Eagles or M1, like smaller time promotions. Not that M1's small, but compared to ACA, it's not as good.
Yeah.
But they all say that Usman's the best one in terms of the Nurmagomedov prospects. I was always into Umar, who's in the UFC now and winning. Everyone said Usman's the better one. I know he's very kicky. He's pretty similar to Umar actually.
To Umar,
But I think he is actually a better striker than that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he's got. I know it's not a super legit opponent probably, but it'll be cool regardless.
There's Brent Primus. That's fun.
That's happening. Just shout out the first fight in the main card is Goethe Yamuchi, who's been in Bellator's division for a while. He's all right. That's typically a lightweight fight. I'm not sure why it's a catch weight, but it's a catch weight. He's fighting Chris Gonzalez, who is undefeated in MMA, first of all. Second of all, he's dating Jessie Jess, how some of you might know him. But I know him because he's a wrestler. He's a Greco-Roman wrestler. He made a non-Olympic world team. Basically, in 2016, they had a world championships during the Olympic year for the weights that are not represented in the Olympics. So it's a real world championship because it's not a weight that's being contested at the Olympics. So it's different people it's the same people really. Sorry, I'm cracking my back. It's the same people that would have been there in a normal world championships, except for the people that can make the other weights that are in the Olympics. So it's not like totally inconsequential, but he made a world team. Didn't medal, but still, he was very good at Greco on the domestic level. He's done well at national competitions in Greco, and he's a good athlete, man. And he takes to MMA very well. I think he's a bit of a natural. He had some tough fights, figuring it out, but I think the guys he fought knew how to give wrestlers problems, honestly. And then he
fought Roger Huerta.
Then he fought Roger Huerta. He beat the crap out of him. So it's like cool. But Goethe Yamuchi is like a karate grappler,
step up,
essentially. Yeah. And Chandler top gamed him. So Chandler's obviously a better grappler than Chris Gonzalez is at this moment. But it's a really good test. So I'm looking forward to that. And I hope he does well. He's a cool guy. And that's it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Zabi's brother is fighting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bigger story for Brent Premise, honestly, was that he was not supposed to, but he was offered Alexander Shabliy, and he turned it down, and I'm very mad at him for it, and I hope Chandler beats him up, or Chandler didn't beat him up the second time, which is very sad. But yeah, Shabliy could have been on this card, and it would have made it even better. Yeah. But yeah, Zabit's brother, Hassan Magomedsharipov. I don't know the guy he's fighting, Jonathan Quiros. I don't know if anyone does. Is he notable whatsoever? Yeah. I mean, it makes sense just because
why would his opponent be? You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense because I think this is like his Bellator debut, and it's sensible. But there's also Georgi Karahanyan, who you mentioned, and he lost to Miles Jury. He's okay. Got a win since split decision, so I don't know the guy he's fighting either. I don't know why Bellator names always seem so like Bellator.
He seems like a judge. He sounds like a judge or a ref.
Well, there's Doug Crosby. Doug Crosby is a judge. That's why
I'm getting that vibe.
Yeah, it's like Kiefer Crosby. I can't imagine a fighter anywhere else named Kiefer Crosby. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's a fake sport with fake people in it. But yeah, so that card isn't like top to bottom good. But if you're a freak and you like to watch every fight, then do it because the Bellator prelims are pretty accessible. I think the main card will probably be on Showtime. Is that true?
Yeah, it's on Showtime.
It's on Saturday. It's on Showtime. Stream it. Don't get Showtime if you don't have it. But so there's that, and we're gonna fly through this UFC card because it sucks.
There's just the main event.
What do you think about the main event? I think nothing about it.
Yeah, it's like the most middleweight fight I could possibly imagine. I could not imagine. You could ask me to make the middleweight fight, and it'd be this one. Sean Strickland. I find he's a lot of fun. I like him a lot more than a lot of people, just because he seems to have decent ideas in what he's doing, if that makes sense. He can put combinations together. He does 1-2s. It's just everything he does. It's so ugly. It's he squares up every time he steps forward. His mechanics on his punches are disgusting. His defense, it's like these really long. It's like he thinks he's Israel Adesanya basically, but his positioning's just all over the place. Anytime he leans anywhere. Guys like Krzysztof Jotko had success just drawing him out of position and cracking him. It's awful. But he does it well, which is weird. And Uriah Hall, surprisingly, is like the exact opposite in every single way. Like he can throw tight punches, he throws tight spinning kicks. He just doesn't really have a process. And the way that he's tried to introduce a process is like a jab, but his jab's really not all that good. Which he doesn't really do things for a lot of the fight is the point. Tries to walk guys onto spinning back kicks or whatever. Doesn't really do it with any degree of success or consistency, apart from Gegard Mousasi that one time. But yeah, I mean, Uriah Hall has the ability to take guys out if they're super irresponsible, but I feel like Sean Strickland's pretty clearly the minute winner. He's minus 200, Sean Strickland is in this fight, which is really surprising to me, just because I don't know how anyone can trust him that much. But I think Strickland probably takes it. Consistent pressure has been a thorn in Uriah Hall's side before. Paulo Costa isn't the most defensively tuned person out there. He walked into the jab over and over, and Strickland at the very least is going to jab with Hall and push him back with it. And Strickland can put combos together. He's super durable. The way that guys tend to land on Strickland, it tends to be relatively educated combination work or just spinning heel kicking him like Zaleski did, which does not bode well. But I don't know. It feels like the sort of fight that Strickland wins all the way until he wins or wins all the way until he dies.
Sounds good. My only read on Strickland is that if he fought someone with a double leg, they would hit it on him because of the way he walks.
Squares up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like Uriah Hall. I want him to win. Strickland's been saying a lot of stuff and sounds super unhinged. So I guess I'm worried about him. But, is it going to be better or worse for his life if he wins? I'm not sure. So I guess I just hope that Hall doesn't kill him.
He did call out Sean O'Malley for the 6'9" tattoo. I think he's the only one to do that. Fight,
or just this is bad.
Called him out because it's creepy and terrible. Yeah. So that's a point in his favor, minus the million against him at this point.
That's the plus side of being unhinged is you say good things sometimes too.
He's the Joker, baby.
He is the Joker.
The rest of the card, let's take a look. Kyung Ho Kang versus Ronnie Yaya. Kyung Ho Kang's been your guy for a while, right?
Yeah, it's mostly a gimmick that he is undefeated in the UFC. He's not really undefeated in the UFC. Technically, he has 2 losses if you want to count them. But even if you do count those, he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-2 in the UFC.
7. 6.
If you don't count the Caceres fight, which
the
he
no
also
contest,
lost. But honestly, he should be better than he is, because he's like, I cannot pronounce it, but there's like essentially this Korean wrestling style that involves the belt, and it's like almost all throws. It's like mostly throws. You can attack the legs too. So it's not like Greco. It's not like sumo. But yeah, it's almost all throws, and he's so good at it. And there was an interview like when he was debuting that the Korean Zombie said, "This guy beats me up. Like this guy kicks my ass in the gym. Like he's way better than me." Really good top player, really good wrestler, super lanky for the division, but really strong. So it's like the best base to be wrestling people, honestly. And he's had some moments like getting point deductions and being kind of dumb. I'm trying to remember which fight it was. I think it was maybe not his last fight, but one of his recent fights where he just went nuts, trying to be like a brawler, like try to go Vanderlei on people. I'm like, all right, that's not really what you should be doing. But yeah, he'll hit crazy throws and do cool stuff and hit arm triangles and other neat chokes. And I just like him a lot. And he did get robbed versus Ricardo Ramos. He should have won that fight. And the Chico Camus fight was weird too, if I recall correctly. So him being undefeated in the UFC isn't totally unfounded. But yeah, I mean, he's probably never going to take a step up in competition. He's just kind of like a fun guy that has fun fights, and you should enjoy that. And he's fighting a grappler, which means he's either going to try to Vanderlei him or they're going to grapple. And if they do, it's going to be awesome because Hanayaya is not a boring grappler. He does pretty cool transitional work. He's got a great top game. He's tried to become more of a striker. He has power, surprisingly, considering his body type, but he's mostly a grappler. He is very old, but Kyung Ho Kang is pretty old too.
Yeah, I mean, he somehow looks older than he is. And looking at his Wikipedia page, he's only 36, which is like... I expected him to be like over 40.
That is shocking. Yeah, I'm off by about a decade.
But yeah, he had not a competitive fight with Ricky Simon, but he survived against Ricky Simon and hit him hard a couple times. And, he's had some fun showings. I mean, it's tough to say a ton just because he's so old. And I'm not really the grappling guy on staff, but
you could be.
He's done a lot of. That's true. I could never be the wrestling guy though. You're too good at that. But yeah, it could be a fun fight. Ronnie Yaya, I don't really trust his cardio at this point. I think is the biggest concern,
Fair.
Just because like there have been more than a couple fights where he's had like strong round ones and just not really been there for the rest. But I think the Barzola fight was one. Was that Barzola or it was? Yeah, where he like grappled him for the first round, just got beat the fuck up for the rest. It was really sad, and I don't like watching him get beat up because like he looks kindly. He has like that Damian Maia energy. Cool. Yeah, so I hope he has a good showing and Kyung Ho Kang doesn't really destroy him. But yeah, I mean, seems interesting enough. I don't really see anything else on this card worth caring about, so why not that?
Yeah, the UFC has a lot of credentialed grapplers, and again, they do such a bad job describing grappling credentials and striking credentials.
Yeah.
But he won ADCC, and I think he medaled at it multiple times, and that's a big deal. Like Ryan Hall, they talk up a ton. Ryan Hall's best grappling achievement is bronze at ADCC once, which, I mean, that's great. But you have several world champions at black belt in the UFC, and you don't talk about them the same way that you talk about Ryan Hall. Like you're doing a bad job when you do that. So just complain a little bit. But yeah, this card, I'm sure it'll be watchable. I'm sure the fights will have some entertainment value, but in terms of like caring enough to preview them, that's kind of it for me. But there are some single fighters that I would like to briefly discuss. None of them are on the main card otherwise, but I'm not going to try to say his last name, but Melsik, the Armenian fellow, I think he's another Edmund Tarvanian guy.
Yeah.
But he's actually
Sounds
a pretty
like
credentialed kickboxer, right?
Yeah, he is out of Glendale Fighting Club. Yeah, he's I don't know how many fights he's had, but he actually has a win a couple years ago over a guy that people rate as the #1 super flyweight, which is actually pretty impressive. Chu Jianliang, something like that. So I'm probably mispronouncing that massively, but he went on Contender Series, beat up Dennis Bazukja, which I think wasn't he the guy who was like a criminal and out of Saralongo or something? I feel like
it could be anyone.
Yeah. But yeah, they were like, oh, this guy's super good. And then he went into Contender Series and lost, and Melsick kind of beat him up near the end. But yeah, Melsick, he should be interesting. I mean, the Contender Series guys tend to fold after a certain point, but it's something. Chris Gritzemacher's return, okay.
I wasn't expecting you to point that one out.
I'm just reading through it. I have no idea what. Oh, Trevin Jones, he's fun.
I'm actually more interested in his opponent. So we know Trevin Jones because he knocked out Timur Valiev. But
yeah.
Ronnie Lawrence is another wrestle kicker. And I'm not sure if he really has wrestling credentials necessarily, but I liked what he looked like in his first fight. I think it was his debut, his most recent fight. But yeah, I saw some promise there. So I'm going to keep an eye on him, see if I see more that I like. But Trevin Jones, friend of the site, Ethan Agigi, who wrestles for Guam and trains out of Southeast Regional Training Center in Virginia. So you should like him, Sriram. He actually trains near Virginia Tech. He's buddies with Trevin Jones.
Oh, I'm pretty far from that.
They're training back in Guam. So yeah, we like him, but I like Ronnie Lawrence too. So that's a cool fight, but that's all I care about really.
Yeah, I thought I recognized the Kasi guy, but it's actually like a different Kasi on the Contender Series. I remember, because there was one Kashi guy who he fought some dude with really weird ankle wraps, and he gassed out in a round and got beat up.
Nice.
So that's the story I have for this card.
Nice.
Nothing super interesting. Kai Kamaka had that really cool banger with Tony Kelly a while ago, and then he lost to someone else, which was very disconcerting. I did not like that. But yeah, it seems like a card that you know how a lot of people say that the worst cards tend to be the most fun.
They do say that.
I expect this one to be like that, but mostly because it's like there are a couple interesting fighters who are going to dominate and a couple of like regional level fights that end up close. And people, that's like all it really takes for people to consider a card good, if that makes sense. Like last week's card, it was legitimately good. We saw a lot of good things from a lot of fighters. But this week's card, I expect it to be a lot of like funnish slop fests. Bellator's the one to watch, basically.
Yeah, you'll have to wait until next week to hear what we thought about the UFC card, because for our commentaries, I think we're going to do the top two fights from the Bellator card, because they're definitely fights that have piqued our interest. I look like the shiny nose girl from TikTok right now. I got some shine on my nose. So that's a good time to end it before I say anything foolish.
Yeah, way too late.
Oh, darn.
Is
that it?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.